Welcome to Struggling to Succeed. My name is Stephen, and on this channel we discuss business, philosophy, and personal development techniques. This week we'll be discussing my top 5 podcasts to follow. Let's get into it. My top 5 podcasts to follow. Now, this list is in no particular order of preference. It's just the 5 podcasts that I look forward to the most, and I really feel like I get a lot of creativity and lessons and just a whole bunch of energy and motivation from listening to this list. So let's start. My first podcast is Tim Ferriss's podcast. I love this podcast for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is Tim is a fantastic interviewer and a very interesting guy himself. So his own experiences and knowledge that he adds to the podcast, and the fact that he's able to get so much out of the people who he's interviewing, is a fantastic talent that he has, which makes for a brilliant podcast. Another one of the reasons why I love Tim Ferriss' podcast is that he is all over the map with his guests. He is not specifically just on personal development or business or philosophy. He goes to many different corners of the world and picks these specialists and very, very smart people to come on to the show. And listening to some of these people has been a complete eye-opener for me and my understanding of what it takes to be an exceptional learner or to be exceptional within a certain field. Not saying that I am exceptional in anything, but understanding the depth that some of these people go to be at the top of their game really makes you take a step back once in a while and just say, wow. My number 2 podcast, and it's on the list purely for motivation and purely just because this guy is one of the smartest entrepreneurs on the planet currently, and that is Gary V's podcast, or Gary Vaynerchuk. Some people don't particularly like his in-your-face, do it and just get it done attitude, but I really enjoy that sort of motivational, mirror in the face. The only thing that's stopping you is you kind of attitude that he comes across in his podcast. Also, if you get into listening to some of his keynote speeches and get past a lot of his 2-minute or 5-minute or 10-minute quick podcasts and actually listen to this guy talk about the world of marketing and digital media and the internet, he is on the ball, on the point, tip of the spear when it comes to marketing and the world of social connection. Very, very smart dude, extremely motivational for me. I particularly like it. I definitely think you should check it out. Listen to some of his longer podcasts. If you're in the world of business or marketing or just want to hear what people are doing on platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat when it comes to building a platform, this guy is the go-to man, so to speak. Podcast number 3, and this one is Exponential Wisdom with Peter Diamandis and Dan Sullivan. I personally think that these 2 guys are 2 of the smartest gentlemen on the planet currently. Dan Sullivan is the owner and operator of Strategic Coach, which I've mentioned before, and Peter Diamandis has got his fingers in so many future pies, it's unbelievable. This guy was one of the gentlemen that pioneered the private space race. So very, very smart guy, and this podcast all circles around the future and future technologies and how we're exponentially heading towards an abundant future. Highly recommend you check it out. I sometimes listen to these guys and I'm just blown away about where their minds are and where they think the world is going. The technologies that are coming down the pipeline are going to dramatically change our lives, from self-driving cars to the stem cell treatments to stopping disease to artificial intelligence, things that we have already had a little bit of a sort of toe in the pool of, but soon the world is just going to be immersed in these technologies, and it is coming very, very quickly. So I recommend you check it out because you'll be blown away at what they think is coming down in our future lives. Podcast number 4 and this one is the TED Radio Hour on NPR. The reason why this podcast is on my list, that it exposes me to certain areas of the world and different thinking that I would never research on my own. I love how they craft this podcast. They take a number of different TED Talks and then bring them all together under a similar theme or title and take you on a journey of how the different thoughts from these different specialists apply to that theme. Recommend you check this one out. I do listen to a lot of business and personal development podcasts, so having this one podcast sort of in my main collection really stretches my thinking and brings totally new ideas and concepts to my mind. And also, I have read a number of books from listening to this podcast, which have made me sort of sparked a little bit of interest, and I've followed that down the rabbit hole. So anything that does that to me gets thumbs up in my life. This brings us to my 5th podcast, and for this one, you get a bonus 2. These 2 podcasts, I Love Marketing podcast and the Genius Network podcast, both from a gentleman called Joe Polish, and both are fantastic podcasts in the world of marketing, business development, and even some philosophy, life tips, and fitness thrown in there as well. The I Love Marketing podcast was started with his good friend Dean Jackson, and has been running for about 5 or 6 years now and has over 200 plus episodes. Also, the Genius Network podcast does cross over. They have similar guests on and even share podcasts when a popular episode is released. He'll share it on both of his channels. The Genius Network podcast is related to Joe Polish's annual event and his Genius Network Masterminds, which a lot of people are members of. Everybody from Dave Asprey to JP Spears to Dean Graziosi, if you've heard him, or Brendan Burchard, Darren Hardy, Dan Sullivan, Peter Diamandis. All of these gentlemen who I've just mentioned, Tim Ferriss has been a member at some points, have been touched by Joe Polish. If you do a little bit of research on Joe Polish, you'll actually see that he is right at the top of this market and is a huge connector, bringing many people together. This is why I love listening to his podcast, because the guests that he bring on are similar to Tim Ferriss's guests. These people are at the top of their games and have got so much experience that just listening to them go through their own life struggles and then relate that to how they were able to build businesses and compete in different markets and learn and grow through their own personal struggles is very inspiring. Any podcast that makes me go like, wow, I need to learn a whole lot more to even compete with these people. I wouldn't even dare to think that I could compete with any of these people. It would be unreasonable of me to think that. So I probably should think it, because being unreasonable in your life and pushing yourself is extremely important. And I think that is probably the most important connecting line between all 5 of the podcasts, or 6 that I've mentioned in this video, is the fact that they all make me want to learn more, and they all make me want to do more in my life, because the opportunity is there every day to learn a little bit, to grow a little bit, and to chase your dreams down like you mean it. Well, that's it from me this week. I hope you find this video helpful and useful. If you did, please go ahead and hit the like button for me. Also, don't forget to subscribe to follow along and get lots more content on my struggling to succeed journey. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you next week. Make it a good one.